From the Asylum to the Astra, a carceral history under the planet's gaze by Professor Paisian, Department of Transdisciplinary Studies, Blackwood University. This essay posits that the development of the American carceral state alongside its symbiotic partners in the slave plantation, the pharmaceutical industry, and the military-industrial complex cannot be fully comprehended through a purely materialist historical lens. By integrating an astrological framework, we can perceive a deeper cyclical patterning of authoritarian energy manifesting through specific planetary alignments. This analysis through specific planetary alignments will trace the evolution of institutional control, from chattel slavery to the modern prison industrial complex and the opioid epidemic, arguing that the transits of Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune provide a celestial cartography for America's enduring relationship with bondage and corruption. The United States was born under a celestial mandate of liberation and contradiction. Its natal chart cast for July 4th, 1776, features a sun in Cancer seeking security and nurturing a new homeland, yet square by a restrictive Saturn in Libra. This tension between the desire for a just society, Libra, and the imposition of harsh, controlling structures, Saturn, is the primordial seed of the American paradox. To understand the history of its prison system is to trace the metastasis of this Saturnian impulse, an energy that found its first and most profound earthly expression in the institution of slavery. The antebellum South was a society ruled by Pluto in Aries, a placement active during the early 19th century. Pluto symbolizes power, death, and the underworld. In Aries, the sign of the self and assertion, it manifests as a raw, violent drive for dominance. This Plutonian Aryan energy fueled the brutal system of chattel slavery, where the will of the enslaver was imposed through absolute power over the bodies of the enslaved. The plantation was the proto-prison, a carceral landscape where control was total and escape was met with devastating violence. The end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment, which famously abolished slavery, except as a punishment for crime, occurred under a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Saturn represents the law and structure, while Neptune governs dissolution, illusion, and confinement. This alignment did not end in bondage, it merely dissolved its old form, Neptune, and restructured Saturn into the legal framework for the convict system and eventually the modern prison. The 20th century witnessed the consolidation of this carceral state, powerfully mirrored by Pluto's transit through Leo, 1937 to 1958. Leo, ruled by the sun, governs the heart, creativity, and on a societal level, the centralization of authority and spectacle. This was the era of the FBI's expansion under J. Edgar Hoover, the rise of the military-industrial complex, and the construction of massive theatrical penitentiaries like Alcatraz. State power became grandiose, performative, and unyielding. Simultaneously, the Cold War and the specter of nuclear warfare cast a long shadow. The development and deployment of the atomic bomb coincided with Pluto's entry into Leo, the ultimate expression of centralized, destructive power. The constant threat of annihilation, a truly Plutonian anxiety, justified an unprecedented expansion of governmental authority and secrecy, normalizing a culture of control that would later be turned inward upon the domestic population. The so-called war on drugs, declared in the 1970s, marks the clearest modern manifestation of this carceral logic. It was launched as Pluto, the planet of the underworld and transformation, was transiting through Libra, the sign of balance and justice. Here, Pluto and Libra corrupted the very scales of justice, transforming them into an instrument of profound racial and social imbalance. This war provided the legal and ideological pretext for mass incarceration, directly targeting communities of color and filling the prisons that had been built on the architectural blueprint of the slave plantation. This brings us to the complicit role of the pharmaceutical industry, a story illuminated by the elusive planet Neptune. Neptune rules over pharmaceuticals, chemicals, addiction, and illusion. The opioid epidemic, a crisis of mass addiction and corporate malfeasance, unfolded under a potent Neptune and Pisces transit, 2011 to 2026. Pisces is the sign Neptune rules, amplifying its effects. During this period, the boundary between healing and harming, between medicine and poison, became dangerously blurred. Neptune Corporations peddled the illusion of non-addictive pain relief, creating an epidemic of dependency that mirrored the societal addiction to incarceration. Both systems, the pharmaceutical and the carceral, offer a Neptunian solution: a pill to numb physical pain, a prison cell to remove social pain, both obscuring the root causes of suffering and generating immense profit from despair. The launch of OxyContin in 1996, the catalyst for the crises, occurred under a Saturn-Uranus opposition. Saturn, structure, control, was challenged by Uranus, rebellion, upheaval, in the sign of healing Sagittarius. This alignment perfectly describes the conflict between a rigid, profit-driven medical establishment, Saturn, and the disruptive, ultimately catastrophic introduction of a new, powerfully addictive technology, Uranus, into the healthcare system. In conclusion, the American prison system is not an anomaly, but a logical, if horrifying, outgrowth of the nation's foundational energies: the Saturnian need for control, the Plutonic drive for power, and the Neptunian capacity for illusion have cyclically converged to shape institutions of bondage. From the Pluto and Aries brutality of the plantation, through the Pluto and Leo centralization of state power and nuclear terror, to the Pluto and Libra perversion of justice in the war on drugs, and finally to the Neptune and Pisces fog of the opioid crises, the planets have cast a consistent, revealing light. They show a nation perpetually struggling with its own shadow, repeatedly choosing the architecture of confinement over the harder work of true healing and liberation. To ignore this celestial context is to misunderstand the depth and cyclical nature of the corruption embedded within the American project. The stars incline, they do not compel, but they provide a profound map of the energies at play, revealing that the history of American authoritarianism is, in many ways, written in the sky.